So between Army Futures Command, who's really got the lead for modernization, in support of Army Futures Command, you have Army Material Command, that we're trying to keep things moving and keep things synchronized. So as you can see, everybody wants to talk about the budget, the FY21 budget. In the Army, about 71 billion or 178 billion, slightly less from the year before. And right now, as you can see, that's a decline from 20 down to 21. And right now, the word that we're receiving is at least it will be flatline for 22. So what we're getting in what we got in 21 should be somewhere around what we got in, or what we'll get in 22. But we're working through those budget requirements. And then, of course, trying to stay connected. I think some of you are familiar with what Army Futures Command uses is cross-functional teams, CFTs. So the CFTs are listed down the side underneath the future soldier. But the challenge for the engineer community right now is we don't have a specific cross-functional team that we can tie into. So why is that important? Well, the why is that important is because the Army Futures Command funds the cross-functional teams. If you're not in a cross-functional team, funding for your programs and funding for your systems will be very limited. So my challenge, and the challenge that we have here with the Commandant and also with the Engineer School, as well as Army Futures Command, is to try to find hooks or connections into the cross-functional teams. So one of the key areas that we try to dial or stay connected with, of course, is the soldier lethality, the assured mobility, the assured positioning and timing, network piece. But our biggest tie-in right now is item number 2, which is the next generation combat vehicle. As we continue to move forward, we the Engineer Regiment want to stay connected with whatever the future vehicle is for the Army. That is, and that's going to come to the Engineer Regiment in small steps. I think most of you are familiar with the engineer formations that we've had over the past couple of years have still been 113 based combat vehicles. Over the past couple of years, we've moved some of those formations inside the brigade combat teams into Bradley fighting vehicles, and we're working. I'll talk in a couple of next a couple of slides here where we're going to go with Bradleys. Long range precision fires. Of course, I still remind the filler artilleryman that you're still obligated to deliver my ground-based munitions, also known as FASTCAM or Adams RAM. So you're still required to do that. So we have to figure out how to do that with long-range precision fires. We've got a couple of things that we're working through with that. I also remind the aviation community with the future vertical lift that you still have an obligation to put my scatterable munitions out, also known as air volcano, at which time they look at me and say, not on my new helicopters. So we'll still probably be using the Black Hawk helicopters for many years to come, which will still give us a platform to in place air volcano. So those are some of the pieces that, we just, as we're continuing to move forward, we're looking at, also with the synthetic training environment, how do we improve our training here at the Engineer Schoolhouse, both institutionally and operationally, those synthetic training environments that we can use here at the schoolhouse. And of course, the wire rope arrow that we have on the bottom side of the slide, it just shows how we're trying to spiral in a lot of the future modernization activities and where they occur across that arrow. The piece that we are focused on right now is making sure that we're maintaining connectivity with Army Futures Command and also a lot of the other Army organizations that support that, primarily the Army Material Command, because that's where our engineer program managers reside, the PMs that help us with our equipment. So I'll go to the next slide. So some of the modernization priorities, I kind of touch base with, if you're not familiar, terrain shaping used to be called counter mobility, still is a counter mobility, but we look at terrain more than just the counter mobility efforts. But those are some systems, as you can see in the upper left-hand side. I think most of you are familiar with the UH-60 air volcano system that goes on the UH-60. We're continuing to, as the helicopter continues to improve, we're looking at smarter ways to emplace or to leverage that airframe to help us emplace the air volcano. And again, that's a very complex operation. It's not just fly the helicopter out and drop the munitions on the ground. It's a deliberate air mission that is nested with the suppression of enemy air defense, air escort, combat air escort, attack helicopters, as well as the search and rescue in case we have to lift the crew out. The center, that's the Gator. That's what the Air Force would be using to put in munitions. And of course, the big water tank size munition that goes on the outside of the aircraft doesn't necessarily support the stealthiness of some of the new systems, so they're not that inclined to use that. So we also look at as part of the modernization, how else can we get those the terrain shaping munitions out far enough to affect the echelon movement into a division sector or into a core sector, so that we can control the tempo of the battle by terrain shaping. And of course, the picture with the three tubes, that is the the spider activated volcano obstacle, also known as SAVO. So this is a design that was developed at Picatinny, RDEC, DivCom, trying to put, a new twist on an old system. So this system actually is reusing the volcano tubes, the anti-tank, anti-vehicular volcano tubes in a new configuration with a ground base plate that the four tubes can connect into. And then we can activate that with a Spider munition system. So we're trying to find out smart and newer ways to use the existing munitions that we do have to use them in a new fashion, so we can get the requirements to shape the terrain as much as possible. Moving to the right, 113, we kind of talked about that. We've been in 113s for quite some time. The 113, I know some of the more seasoned attendees remember when the 113 came out in 1963. And then as we try to migrate, excuse me, into the Bradley, we were successful in getting the engineers inside the BCTs into the Bradleys. My focus right now, and we're moving forward with the echelons above brigade engineer formations. For example, down at 36 Engineer Brigade at Fort Hood, we're moving soldiers into Bradleys and passing the 113s down the line as we roll those 113s over to other formations that have earlier versions. So we're just trying to cascade those into other formations that still need a newer version of the 113. Lower left-hand side, armored breach vehicle, ABV. That is our primary heavy breaching resource. That coupled with the MICLIC, and so as we try to use the breacher vehicle, trying to maintain it, keep that maintained as well as possible, and we're fortunate that we're able to pick up about 50 assault breach vehicles from the Marine Corps as they transition their mission set from a heavy armored formations to light austere formations. So they divested of their tanks, which triggered the divestiture of about 50 breacher vehicles, which we were able to trigger a divestiture of the M9 Ace. So, and I'll talk to the M9 Ace here in a little bit. Moving across the bottom, joint assault bridge. We started fielding those in June. We picked up 6 of them here at Fort Leonard Wood. Fort Hood is receiving their jabs, and they're also being fielded to Compo 2 at the same time. So we're looking at fielding those resource requirements that are absolutely needed and getting them out to the formations as quickly as possible. And jab is a huge success. I actually got to the assembly plant is here in Missouri, so I got to go down to the assembly plant and watch them marry up the M1 tank chassis with the scissor bridge, and the parts that connect them together are all made right there in West Plains, Missouri, with Leonardo Defense. So I was very, very, very pleased to get down there and see that. And of course, we're continuing to try to fill the requirement for river crossing operations as we go forward with multi-role bridge company, adding in more multi-role bridge companies to the Army formations. Okay, so as we talk about breaching, and I said this will be the first B that I talk about. First is we're divesting of the M9 Ace. We're looking at getting rid of that piece of equipment. I think we've all touched an M9 Ace somewhere, and it was just a very difficult vehicle to maintain and operate. The next vehicle, the assault breach vehicle with plow and Miklik, a very, very good breaching system, very capable system that we're very proud to have. And we're continuing to use that as part of our combat engineer companies. I talked earlier about capitalizing on the Marine Corps assault breach vehicles that are coming in. This particular photo has them with the dozer blade, but it's a mix of dozer blades and plows. So we're just very happy to have the additional heavy breaching under armor resources that we do have. And then, of course, continuing to breach with up armored D7 dozers that we, to replace the M9 Ace as part of an earth moving capability. Understand that the commandant's focus is to get the sapper out of the breach. We want to be able to leverage a technology in the right-hand side of the slide, get the sapper out of the breach, and leverage the technology so that we can remote or make it autonomous technology so that the breaching system can move forward based upon waypoints to a point of penetration to execute a combined arms breach, the reduction effort in that combined arms breach, so that we don't have sappers, in that incredibly lethal combat area. Next slide, bridging. I talked about the joint assault bridge. Very, very happy to have the joint assault bridge, and then trying to make sure that we get that into the combat engineer formations. And we did start fielding it in June. Very happy to have those systems on board. The REBS, the rapidly in place bridge system. We have those in our infantry brigade combat teams. The system provides a capability to move light armored vehicles across it to support localized gap crossing to support the IBCT. And they're concentrated, up at JBLM and then out at Fort Bragg. We did do a train-to-trainer operator maintenance training event at JBLM, Joint Base Lewis McChord, in fall of 20, which was very successful. So we're looking at doing that same methodology for other bridging systems that we need inside our formations. The improved ribbon bridge, I think we're all familiar with that. And very, very good system. One of the upgrades that we are doing to the system right now is we're retiring the old Mark II boats and replacing them with the M30 bridge erection boats. So we've started that, I think it was last year, and we're continuing to do that so that we can round out the remaining Compo 1 and Compo 2 and then Compo 3 multi-role bridge companies. And so we'll continue to do that for the next couple of years. The dry support bridge, it's a key system that we have in our inventory. Bridge is a little complicated, and so we're trying to make sure that we can execute our river crossing, gap crossing requirements with this system. And so we're continuing to use that. The bridge itself is very good. It holds the weight that we need. So we're just trying to make sure that we get enough training opportunities on it. And of course, line of communication bridging, very important system. It really does, and primarily it's the float is the system that we're most focused on right now because it's the most complicated. But it's absolutely critical for us to understand how to plan, prep, and execute a Lock B float bridge system so that one, we can pull the ribbon bridge out of the water and then move that forward to maintain the momentum of the battle. The Lock B will allow us to, continue to in place temporary, semi-permanent bridging on a water obstacle, and also pass the very heavy weights that we do have right now, and then lift the ribbon bridge out and then move that forward so we can continue to move forward in theater. So you can see the way ahead, still trying to get the sappers out of the breach, trying to reduce the number of sappers required at the bridging site, leverage autonomous technology, improve bridge training, and improve the emplacement times. We can see right now, and I think most of us have done river crossing operations where you do the improved ribbon bridge, and it can take a couple of hours. You do the line of communication bridge, and it may take a couple of days, depending on the length of the span. The challenge here is we're looking at smarter ways to put bridge components together so that we can reduce the emplacement time at the river crossing site. And how that happens is improved bridge training. So one of the things that we're really focused on, not just here at the schoolhouse, but also in our operational forces, are ways to improve our bridge training. All right, in building, we are bringing online new heavy dump trucks. Actually, this dump truck is commercially available, and very good system. This particular photo has it with the up armored cab, so it's a wonderful system that'll help us with moving heavier loads of earth with our construction companies. Currently fielding the new Type 2 heavy crane. Actually got to drive and ride in one a couple of months ago. Absolutely fantastic piece of equipment, and just a very good system. Will help us out quite a bit, especially in not only in the construction, but primarily in the bridge construction, especially if we talk about Lock B construction. I mean, this is a resource that will help us speed up the construction process of the float Lock B. So very happy to have that system on board. And it too is going to not only Compo 1, but we're pushing Compo 2. The company did a delivery up in Maine a couple weeks ago. So I know the Maine Army National Guard is very happy to have that new crane on board. And of course, working to recapitalize aging construction equipment. Most of our fleet is 15 to 20, if not older, 20 years old, and has gone through at least a couple of service life extension programs. However, we keep getting asked to drive the car a little bit longer. We can drive the car so long, and then when you can't get parts for it, then you have to start cannibalizing systems so that you have parts available. We aren't there yet, but it becomes very difficult to maintain a construction fleet when it's very difficult to get repair parts. So the way ahead, again, leveraging remote or technology, construction technologies to help improve safety and capability and safety. For example, in the dump truck, the heavy dump truck, there are safety systems on that dump truck that prevents blind spots. There are safety systems on there for tilt angles so that you don't raise the bed if you're if you're off of elevation is too far off left or right, so that you don't end up tipping over. It also gives you a safety consideration for your load, so you can't overload, or you shouldn't be able to overload the truck before it moves. So that helps keep soldiers safe as they transport these systems, or use these systems to move earth from point A to point B in a combat formation. And then likewise with the crane, there are new safety systems on that crane that will help make it operate in a much safer manner. So anything that we can do to improve technology, or use technology to improve the construction capability and also safety. Part of the challenge I have is, of course, we have very old equipment, and the balance that I have is balancing what we can improve on in the field to fight tonight, and also balance what I need as part of the strategic portfolio review and future funding for the Engineer Regiment. The challenge we have here in the one of the challenges is we have Army Futures Command that looks at 2035 and the large-scale combat operations in the future at 2035 and beyond. I have FCC, they look at the waypoint, which is 2028, those formations that need to stand up to enable the Army to reach the aim point of 2035. And I have equipment and formations in the regiment that have a requirement to fight tonight. So I span from fight tonight to 35 and beyond, and we have to make that all balance based upon the funding that we receive. And of course, that's always a challenge. It has been, and I know it will be in the future. And I think some of us on the net have probably lived through some of those dialogue and discussions inside the building, trying to make sure that we have enough money to maintain the engineer fleet. And of course, expeditionary facilities, the repair and construction that has to happen while deployed. So that's always a challenge, being able to reach out. And I think the engineers are probably in a much better stance deployed, because we can always reach out to a commercial vendor and acquire some of those specialized parts for our heavy equipment that are commercially available. So that gives us a little bit better edge when we're deployed, where we can reach out and get some local parts or parts support from local vendors. Okay, so I've been running my mouth now for about 30 minutes. I'm going to take a break, and I'll open the floor for questions.
Sean, this is Dan Kratz. If you don't mind, I'd start off with going back to the movement to the M2s and the units, and that's wonderful to be out of 113s. And you were kind to not say that we who remember it are old. But is there any intention to put a blade or mine plow on the M2s going forward? Just because the concern would be ABVs may not be in the right place at the right time.
Dan, great question. There's no discussion at this point, although that is, and I've seen some concepts where we have that, excuse me, and I think that might be a good approach to at least provide additional breaching capability inside the BCT, because you're right. I mean, we've only got the ABV, the heavy breacher vehicle may not be readily available, and with the preponderance of potential scatterable mine systems that could be on the battlefield from large-scale combat operations, that would provide more flexibility in mobility breaching capability. Good thought. Over.
Sean, thanks. And the only follow-up then I'd have in terms of ABV is, I know the Australians are getting the ABV and looking at some additional things, including a bucket loader or manipulator arm. Is there any thoughts moving forward for us to do similar and to kind of follow on behind them?
Well, I'll tell you, I was delighted to hear that Australia wanted to take a look at the assault breach vehicle. We can leverage and capitalize on the lessons that they're learning from the system, and if it makes sense for us to add additional systems onto the breacher, then then I think it makes sense for us to at least take a look at it and have at least some resources available with that capability on it. Over.
Sean, and I apologize, I don't try to monopolize, but do cover a couple of industry partners. The only other question I had was you'd mentioned the MRBC growth, little bit of concern about the growth of the ancillary equipment that goes with that. Is there any discussion? Because I know the Type 2 Heavy contract is running out.
The additional equipment inside the multi-role bridge company, outside of, well, I really haven't, Dan, good question. I haven't taken a look at second, third order effects of the additional equipment. But as we purchase the package of a multi-role bridge companies, we are looking at a complete package. What we don't want to do is bring online part of a multi-role bridge company and not have everything in it. There are some discussions about, what's your bare minimum essential requirements, and that's kind of where we are right now. We are taking a look at it, but from my perspective, if I have multi-role bridge companies with limited capability, then they're not multi-role bridge companies, they're improved ribbon bridge companies. But good question, Dan.
Oh, sorry.
Dr. Howley, good evening. It's Richard Beetson from Pearson Engineering in the United Kingdom here. Thank you very much for your presentation. I've been having a glass of red wine given the time zone over here as I've been listening to you. You mentioned the Caterpillar D7. Are you able, and with emphasis you're putting on that, are you able to expand in any more on that particular platform?
Expand as in adding additional capabilities. One of the considerations we are looking at is potential robotics, or at least remote control, because we are exploring the electronic over hydraulic. And if we have electronic over hydraulic as part of the dozer system, then that gives us the ability to easily make that more of a robotic system, or at least remote control. So it gives us a little bit more flexibility, and that helps with the commandant's objective of getting sappers out of the breach. But it also gives us an opportunity to link the other dozers together in a capability where they could be a leader follower in a dozing operations, for example, cutting in survivability positions. You can have a lead dozer do the whole defilade, and then a follower dozer just push the spoil. So we're looking at ways to expand that way. Did that answer your question, Richard?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, and just for the fun fact, you're having wine. I'm just having coffee.
Good.
Cheers. Next question.
Yeah, hey, Sean, Steve Danner, how you doing?
Hey, Steve.
Hey, good. Bridge the Sky, 10th Engineer Battalion. Hello.
Yep, Roger.
Hey, I was a couple points. I like the new doctrinal term of the 3 Bs. We use that in Kuwait and Baghdad. Paul Grosser and I, when we were supporting General McFarland with the Baghdad Advisory Planning Cell. So that's good. I like that. Tell Doug Merrill he needs to put that in the next doctrinal update. But more importantly, hey, we had a PM call today on the road ahead for the next portion of Lock B contract, which is phase 2, gets into the stuff we talked about last month for training. Would like to know your vision, concepts for training, locations, type bridges that Fort Leonard Wood's looking at. We're going to be talking some big picture lessons learned for the Fort McCoy build here in the future between PEM Industry, 416th, and others. So, you know, there were some major lessons learned last week, but was able to pull that off, and that unit built that stuff to standard. My second part is part of a NATO work group, a bridging industry work group, and there are some concerns within this work group on the ability of the IRB to take the higher MLC of these SEP version 3. So what is the timeline? This is important to tie into the replacing an IRB so it can move forward. What is the timeline to improve that MLC for the IRB? Over.
Well, right now, okay, so for the first question, the training concept, and Steve, I think you're familiar. We're from the institutional and also for the operational capability for training, primarily the line of communication bridge, but other bridging resources. We've identified, I think it's 7 locations, but I think there's 2 of them that are specifically designed for the wet gap, which is one of my personal primary focus areas. So we have one here at Fort Leonard Wood for the wet gap down at Training Area 250. But there's other training locations across the United States that will allow units to go train on Lock B, as well as some float. But those, you know, and the idea there is to have those have the Lock B sets already pre-positioned so that we don't have to move the sets to the location all the time, but the units can move to that training location and then do the Lock B training set, you know, do the set and laid all the stuff out, and then execute the like a 50-meter build as part of the training package. Reference the NATO float, and you and I talked about faster and quicker ways to put Lock B in. The tempo is going to be relatively quick, so that's the faster I can put Lock B in or dry support bridge, but primarily faster I can get Lock B float in, the better off we are, and that'll provide more float resources, i.e. ribbon bridge, to be able to be lifted out and then move forward to support the forward brigade combat teams in the divisions. Over. Okay.
Yeah, I got the concept there. I mean, we're working that hard, as you well know. I'm just there's some concern with this M1A2 SEP-V3 coming in at MLC 90 plus. You're talking probably a high caution, maybe a risk crossing on a IRB. Is there a plan to improve that MLC for the IRB? Over.
Yeah, Steve, the 90 military low class 90 is only part of the equation. You add the, you know, yeah, the tanks are getting heavier. Yes, there is a plan right now. We're testing that here this fall, trying to make sure that we actually, you know, put the raft together, put the bridge together, run the heavier tank across it, see what the stresses are on the raft sections and or the bridging sections, to make sure that we can actually float and keep the tank on the bridge and get it across the wet gap. It may be a function of you can only cross, as opposed to, you know, you may only be able to cross fewer tanks in a time span, because you have to have more float bridge underneath that tank in order to maintain its float or its buoyancy. So that's one of the things that we're testing out coming up here. I think it's either this month or next month or October, but it's coming up pretty soon. We're testing that out. Over.
Yeah. Hey, thanks. That's a great update. That would be that would definitely be a test to see. I know it's not really part of my the industry that I'm in, but it definitely ties in together on the whole doctrinal piece. So thanks for the update, Sean.
And then to follow up, one of the challenges, we talked the M1 tank sets V3, and then you put that on a het, and now you've got a pretty heavy load. And one of the things that we've got to make sure is the lock B systems that we do have and the floats that we're putting in can sustain that as part of a forward movement or a return of those formation of those equipment back to a maintenance area. So yeah, it's all about heavier tank, military load class, and then making sure that our bridges can move those heavier requirements up and down the battlefield. Over.
Yeah, hey, I'm tracking. Getting ready to go up next week, I think, to Aberdeen to check at least out the 100-meter with Pier dry gap. But yeah, I've been out there to witness at least an MLC 134 load with the new het and new tank at Aberdeen. So it's there. We just got to get the training thing under control. Over.
Yep. Next question, team. Okay. Well, if there are no, Dan, go ahead.
Sean, I'm sorry. I don't mean to monopolize, but I did have one other question, and it had to do with a bit with the Rebs. But is there was once upon a time a discussion about having a Stranker have a bridge launch slab, have a bridge capability or rapid bridging or gap crossing capability. Is that dead, or is there any hope for that in the future?
No, I think the Reb system we have right now, I think that's the system we've got for the Strikers. The challenge right now, I mean, we're continuing. It's a low density bridging system, and it's really trained at the unit. We do some initial familiarization here at the schoolhouse on what the Reb system is, but really the training is done at the unit. Moving forward with another variant of the Rebs, I'm not having any discussion here at the schoolhouse or with the PM reference that at this time. Over.
Okay, understood. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Helly, this is Glenn Curley. I have a question reference some of the vehicle platforms on the Army Future Command that you didn't mention. Are there any breaching capabilities that are being planned for, say, like the obviously manned fighting vehicle or the mobile protector fires or the RCV modular mission payloads? Are you involved in those?
Oh yeah, I touch a little bit of that. Some of the future pieces. In summary, yes, we are looking at leveraging some of the remote vehicle systems that AFC is exploring right now with modular engineer packages that would go on that system. For example, I think the Mule is. Most folks are probably familiar with that, which is, the about a pickup truck size autonomous or semi-autonomous wheeled vehicle that you can put a load on. So one of the things that we're looking at there is there a plow package that we can put on that, or is there a MICLIC package that we can put on that? Engineer specific, either mobility or counter mobility. Can we put a volcano package on that and then, plug in the waypoints and have it move to a location and then be prepared to in place scatterable systems that we need. So yeah, we're looking at some of those pieces. And then with, for example, mobile protected fire, I think there's still a ground breaching requirement that we'd have to have. And we would use the systems that we still have on hand to execute that. So, we would look at whatever the system is, and then see if a plow or explosive breacher system would be appropriate for the tactical protected firepower system. Over. Good question, Glenn. Thanks. Glenn,
Hey,
any,
Sean, this is Dave. I was kind of reviewing some of the questions that had been submitted from some of the registrants, and I think there are two that, I don't think have kind of come up. The first one is, how will the explosive hazard defeat mission evolve in support of multi-domain operations?
explosive hazard defeat. Let's think. You know, in the multi-domain operation, I know that we have a tendency to move quickly back to large-scale combat operations, where we look at the explosive hazards primarily as part of the breaching process. I think we're going to have explosive hazards throughout the depth of a division sector.
Right.
It historically has been there. We saw that. We saw that in Vietnam. We saw that in Iraq. We saw that in Bosnia. Saw it in Somalia. I mean, it was, the explosive hazards are going to be there. We really can't wish that away. So that's going to be a requirement that we're going to have to plan for and have resources available to address that requirement if for mobility. We're going to have to contend with that. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, because the second question really kind of ties into that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see any foresee any upcoming requirements for ground search detectors? My thought is, as you kind of looked at how we took the MRAPs back into the force structure, you took the operational environment piece and you incorporated some of those back. I guess, is that still an ongoing piece, or is the institutionalization of things we generated, for the specific theaters, or is that kind of come to an end, that process?
I think the focus right now is to one, consolidate the institutional knowledge that we have, make sure we have that readily available. The resources that we have in our route clearance companies, those are the systems that we will continue to retain in our formation. So any technology improvements with detection systems that improve our detection capability using our existing route clearance formations and route clearance equipment, I think that's the approach that we'll have to take. I won't be able to bring something new into the system, into our formations, just because of the funding limitations. But I think there might be a way that we can improve the detection systems that we do have. Over.
Okay. Like I said, I think those are the only two going down the list that we've not touched on. Subject to anybody else having a question. Okay, I know we had a little bit of time.
This is Fred. Hi,
hey, okay.
Fred Erst from Tech Defense. Hey, wish we were in Fort Leonard Wood this week, but obviously we're still all across the country. We ended up joining a little bit late. Just a quick question, and you probably covered it during your briefing, and I know we'll catch up with that later. Any other insights you can give us on the overall budget challenges that the Indian Regiment's facing?
Right now, yeah, and I let me just, I don't know if you can see the slide, Fred, but I'll just pop that up. Bottom line, for the 21 budget modernization for the Army was about $178 billion, and right now, which is a little bit less than what we got last year. But what we've heard right now is we anticipate flatlining from 21 into 22. So that tells me is no additional dollars, and hopefully we'll get what we received last year. So, but I think there may be some bills out there that the Army still has to pay, which may reduce our overall funding. But right now, what we're planning is flatline from 21 into 22. Over.
Okay. Yeah. P40 sheets didn't look all that good as we look into the future. So.
No, it's been a reducing trend for the last couple of years, and if you look at the big bills that the Army is required to pay, and also the modernization effort, there's very little dollars available to do other portfolios. Over.
Right, and I did catch your other comment about the what you're recapitalizing on the aging construction equipment fleet. So.
Yeah, that's and Fred, you and I've lived through that as well. It's a constant battle to try to keep our old equipment up and running. You can do a service life extension and you recap programs to try to keep equipment running, but it really comes down to you can only drive the car so long, and then you got to get a new car. But we'll continue to drive our equipment as long as we can, given the resources that we have available.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate you guys putting this together.
Well, my pleasure. Happy to help as always.
Any other questions from the participants in today? Okay. Sean, I'd really like to thank you for taking your time today, for sharing your insights, with kind of how Army modernization, some of the priorities and the future of the Engineer Regiment. I know we've had some kind of join late, so I know we recorded part of this and we've got the slides, so we will work out how to make them available to everybody. I'd really like to thank your time and input here and helping communicate where the regiment's going.
Oh, hey, Dave, my pleasure. And again, to all the participants, thank you all very much for your time, because I know you're incredibly busy as well. And really want to thank Dave and the crew for hosting this. It's always a pleasure to talk about the Engineer Regiment and reconnect with old friends.
All right. Thank you very much today.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day, folks.